Hello again, everybody. This is Craig Evans of Autism Hangout, and thank you for tuning into this Autism Hangout feature program series, Apps for Autism. Every day, more and more incredibly helpful apps are appearing for our special kids. And today's guest is here all the way from Limerick, Ireland. So Autism Hangout, please welcome today's guest, Mom Avril Webster. Welcome, Avril. It's really nice to have you here.
Thank you, Craig, and greetings from Ireland.
That's one of the most beautiful things about Skype. I think this is so cool that we can have a conversation like this face to face.
I totally agree with you. It's fantastic.
Now, unlike most of the people that are developing apps today in a one-off environment, you have actually written a series of books that have been proven successful in helping your special needs son face challenges in a daily environment. And I want to talk a moment about your books before we get to your apps. They are called the Off We Go book series. They prepare children for everyday experiences and they improve language and social skills. The Off We Go series supports kids to partake in activities that otherwise might be overwhelming. And these are very common activities such as going to the supermarket, going to the dentist, and going to the doctor. So in setting up the story about you and your son, tell us a little bit about that situation and then let's talk about the books.
Thanks, Craig. Yeah, so as you say, I have created the Off We Go series of books, and I created them for my son Stephen. I don't know if you can see a photo here over my shoulder. Okay. There's a picture of Stephen there. Stephen is classified at the severe end of intellectual disability, but I also have to tell you he's has great musical talent. He's playing the drums there in that photograph, and he's also a great swimmer with Special Olympics. But like many children with autism, Stephen's at the kind of more complex end of learning needs, and he doesn't like going to new places and can get very scared and very anxious if you've got a change in routine. And I want to try and give Stephen the same access to everyday things, like the things you mentioned there, as I do to for my other children, Michael and Rachel. But for children with autism, sometimes this can be very hard. So actually, what started me here was Stephen lost a permanent front tooth a couple of years ago, and this meant lots of visits to the dentist, and he was really scared and anxious, and I didn't really know what to do. So I asked his teacher, speech and language pathologist, and we already use pictures to communicate with Stephen all the time, and they said to me, you know what, Avril, if you tried putting those pictures in a sequence with some everyday language, it might help Stephen to cope. And so, Craig, I had a go with it. I put together some pictures with some simple language, and I went through it with him, and I found that the more I prepared him, the better able he was better able to manage. And we got to the dentist, and I'm very proud to tell you, using those pictures and in the little book format, he got to sit up on the dentist chair and managed to cooperate. One
of the things we need to mention about Stephen, as is true for many kids with autism, is he also has sensory issues.
Stephen has lots of those sensory issues, and I have to just mention as I talk about it, to tell people about the wonderful videos that you have up on Autism Hangout by an inspirational young man called Paul Isaacs, who has autism. Right. He explains what this is about. His senses don't come together and don't work the same way that ours do. If we hear some external noises, we can actually push those noises away. But for children and individuals with autism, they're right around them and distracting them and right in their faces. And the other thing is, oftentimes these sounds can be much louder than we actually hear. In fact, I was reading recently where some individuals with autism can hear sounds 4 times louder than we do.
Paul does have some excellent programs at Autism Hangout, as does Lindsay Beal, the author of The Sensory Smart Child. So for those of you that are looking at this whole sensory processing issue, social stories work, and what Avril Webster has done very successfully is combine all this information into a series of books that introduce not only the concept of what the child is about to do in an everyday setting, but quite possibly some of the sounds. In fact, that's a pretty good segue to take it from the paper print book form into the to the application form, like with an iPad.
We use my iPhone and iPod Touch to help Stephen to just if he's getting upset, that he might use it to kind of help himself to calm down. So we use this technology for distraction and to help when we're out and about. But moving on from that, also the portability and practical nature of it. So let's say I'm at the dentist, what happens is I might not have the book with me, but I'm going to have my phone, my iPhone, and I can talk Stephen through and help him know what's going to happen next.
We have a short clip too of what this actually looks like. So let's take a look right now at the short clip on going to the dentist.
Going to the dentist. I am going to the dentist. Da. Dentist. D-E-N-T-I-S-T. Telephone. Drill. Suction. Basin.
To be able to go into something like a dentist's office and show this is very calming to the child, but there's one other feature of your apps. You have the ability to put in your own voice and your own narration. So could you talk a bit about that?
Just to take you back for a moment to that story of Stephen losing that tooth, which meant we had to go to the dentist for lots of visits. Craig, we get as far as the waiting room, okay? And I'd be sitting with Stephen, and the next thing, guess what we'd hear from the surgery next door? The sound of the drill. And I'd have Stephen out of that seat and out the door, and there was no way I was going to be able to get him back in. So coming back to what we were talking about earlier with those sensory problems, the idea of being able to add in the sound so that not only that we can prepare Stephen using the pictures so he knows what the environment is going to be like, but also that we can add in some of the big sounds so that we can help him desensitize, if you like in the safety of our home beforehand. We can go through those sounds with him. And one other thing we found that really useful was, when you're in the waiting room, Craig, sometimes it can be a bit tricky, and one of the features we have is where you can colour in the pictures yourself. So as we're talking Stephen through and he's becoming more familiar with what's happening, he can actually colour in the picture himself. And he quite enjoys it, and it's a great distraction in the waiting room area.
How many apps do you have? I mean, your book series is what, 12 books that you have now, like Getting on a Plane and Buying Clothes and Birthday Party. How many books are out there?
So I actually have 12 hard copy books, and I've selected 2 as apps. So I have Going on a Plane and Going to the Dentist as my 2 apps. So
you've got 2 programs now based on your book, with a possibility of 10 more to come. For the people that are interested in these apps but aren't curious as to how they work, I know that at your website you're giving away an example of how these work now for free.
So at my website, offwego.ie, I have an interactive app for going to get your hair cut. Because as you can imagine, with those sensory processing issues, the noise of the clippers and the scissors around your head was very distressing for Stephen.
These books are phenomenal, and the fact that you can keep rolling out these apps based on these books, and if people write you and say, can you write another book or an app about this particular situation, I commend you for what you're doing for all of us. Can you tell us when these books are going to be available in America?
I am really excited and delighted to tell you, Craig, that I'm working with Woodbine House Publishing in the United States, and we're going to have the hard copy versions available in springtime of next year.
Avril, thank you so much for giving back to the community. You found something that works for your child, and now you're sharing it with the rest of us. I commend you for doing that and taking the time and the expense to put these apps together for us. So thank you for coming on today and telling us about them.
Thank you, and thank you, Craig, for the work you're doing in connecting us across the world to support each other. I really appreciate it.
Together we can all learn to thrive with autism, and you're helping make that possible. So thank you again for coming on, and thank you, Autism Hangout, for tuning in. I'll be back again soon with another app for autism.